Hello, this is John from after the tutorial. I realised I haven't really explained why you might want to do this. So first of all, when you're first starting out with Marvelous Designer, if you've never sewn anything or done anything before, you might not know what sort of shapes patterns are. So using 2D patterns can give you a good idea of how patterns should be and how they go together. Especially on more complicated garments, much more complicated than this, where you might have extra steps or extra bits like darts and cuts, which are crucial for making the garment work. So it's a learning experience as much as anything, teaching you what you might want to do, what sort of shapes are needed for any particular garment. And there are lots of free things available, free patterns available on the internet that you can practice on. The second thing is also, once you've got a garment that works really nice, you can save it off as a template or save it off as a garment and then use it later on to create other things. So that's that. I'll stop waffling now and start with the tutorial. Talk to you soon. Hello, welcome to this next Marvelous Designer tutorial. It's a tutorial we're going to have a look at a clothing pattern, like a flat 2D sewing pattern, and we're going to transform it into a 3D model. So I've made a little pattern here on my Ko-fi site. I'll drop the link below, so you can come and grab this and follow along. So let's have a look, see what's going on. So what I need first is a pattern piece. So we'll come up here and we'll have a rectangle. I'm just going to left click and I'm going to make it 750 by 750. Now my theory on that is that's about the length of a t-shirt. It might be a bit longer, it might be a bit shorter, but it's not far off. So let's click OK on that. Okay, so on this we want to add a graphic. So if we come up to the graphic menu up here and graphic 2D pattern, and if you browse to the directory that you've got your or you've saved your pattern to, whether you've used mine, well, that's not the right one, of course. That's foolish. It's this one. Oh yes, I know it's on the internet. I know I'm daft. There we go. And open your image. And then just click onto your piece. It's going to come in with a width and a height. So I'm going to make it 740. Well, actually, I'm going to make it enough so that the height fits. So let's go 720. Ooh, not quite. Let's do 710. There we go. Because my image is not quite square. And where we position it, outline, we'll position it, outline's fine. There we go. So that's now got it onto our pattern piece, and what I can do is just transform this by just moving that in so it fits completely inside. So you'll notice this looks remarkably like the background of Marvelous Designer. That's because I made it in Marvelous Designer and then took a picture of it, basically. But you can get, lots of sewing patterns all across, the internet. Be cautious about what you do. Some of them copyrighted, some of them aren't, but just be careful. So once you've got your image in, what we can do is use our internal polyline tool. So we're actually drawing on this pattern piece. So what I want to do is just trace the outline. So I'm just going very carefully around, just popping a point on each of the major points on the pattern piece, not worrying about the curvature or anything like that, and then closing it up. And once I've done that, I can look at the curvature. So I'm just going to click this cut button so this is sort of pinned outside. There we go. So edit curvature, and then I'm going to get these sort of approximately where they need to be. They're probably not going to be 100% right first time, but we'll give it a go. And then zoom in and we want the edit pattern. I just want to make sure that I didn't miss any points or get them too far off the pattern piece. Is that one okay? Could go up a bit. There we go. That's okay. That's okay. Right. So for your curves, then, it's very rare that you're going to get one that just curves right the first time. So with the edit pattern tool, what we can do is select an end and then adjust our curve with the handle. And all I'm doing is just moving ever so slightly until it matches my line up quite nicely, which that does. So this one then, it's curving below where I want it to, so I'm just going to move it up a little. There we go. And this one is just a little bit out. There we go. So that's that one. And once I've got all those done, I can double click on the outline, right click and cut. And that is going to give me a new pattern piece. There we go. Which is the, I believe that's the front of my T. There we go. Right, so reselect, and then we'll go back to internal lines. And now I'm going to do the back. Go and get it as close as I can. Might zoom in a little bit now. Just picking up the main points and then closing up. There we go. And then I'll edit curvature and put my curves in. As you can see, that one's not great. That one's not too bad, but it will need a little tweak. And let's have a look at this one. Oh, that's an easy one. Nice, long, slow one. Okay, so then to fit the curves more accurately, go back to edit pattern, select a point and adjust the curve handle. So this is below the line, so I want to push that point up so that it is much closer. And if it's too long, I can shorten the handle length and that will shorten the curve. So what have we got down here? If I select there, I don't think this one's too far off. Just give that a little bit of an adjust. Actually, that one's not far off. It's a miracle. This one's a little bit out. Yeah, that's annoying. So that wouldn't give me that handle there. So I might have to go to edit curvature and then click on it and hope I get a line to do it. No, I don't. I'll just have to adjust it. And then I think I'll probably have to adjust the bottom line to accommodate for that. There we go. So if I move that over, that will get close to the line. I just need to make sure that hasn't affected the top of the line. Oh, see, now I can see the, I wouldn't see the handle. Typical. Okay, so once I've done all that, I'll double click, right click and cut. And now we have the back, or the back half. You might notice I'm doing this in halves because I never like to do more work than I actually have to. Okay, so the arm, you know, I have difficulty with the arm curve, so using a pattern is quite a good idea because it's more realistic. Often I don't, because I'm trying to make it work for a 3D environment, and 3D, you know, and reality aren't always all that close. So let me go to my internal line. Let's pop this in. So one there, one there. Whoops, that might be a bit out. Zoom in a bit. There we go, and close it up. Now this looks like a really complex curve, but oftentimes you'll find that you can do it in one lump, well, with just one curve point. So I've just put a curve in, and now what I'm going to do is match the bottom. You'll see I'm just moving the handle sort of down and in, so I'm shortening the line, making the curve shorter, and I'm changing the angle. And then we'll do the same on the top. So I'm going to shorten it That's not quite there at the top anyway. Whoops, come on. And then this one, I think I might lengthen that a little bit and take it up a little bit. And that's not bad. That's pretty close to that curve. So then we can double click. Oh, I forgot these ones aren't quite where they should be. Let's move that one in. And move that one in. There we go. I would prefer these two to be lined up because I'm going to unfold them. So I'm just going to select them, align, and is it middle or is it center? It's center. Of course it is. It's always the one I think it isn't. So right click, align, and center. Yep, that one's there. That one's a little bit off the bottom, but I'm not unhappy about that. Okay, so double click, right click, cut, and oh no, not cut and sew, just cut. Okay, so that's traced in the pattern. In the next little section, what we'll do is fit this to an avatar and go from there. So I'll talk to you then. Okay, so let's add an avatar in. So I'm going to use my G8. G8. And then I'm just going to move these around a little bit because I want to give them a bit of space because we're going to unfold them now. So I'll select the middle line, right click, unfold with symmetric editing. So that if I do have to make an adjustment, you know, it will happen on both sides. We'll do the same here, unfold, and the same on the sleeve. The sleeve, I often find if I do that with symmetric editing, it messes my sewing up. So I'm just going to unfold that one. Okay, so let's arrange these a bit closer to the avatar and see how big they are. So depending upon the size, you might find yours are a little smaller or a little bigger. Just adjust them, you know, according to, you know, your eye, how you think. I might want this to be a little bit bigger. There we go. We can always adjust it later, it's not a problem, so don't worry about it too much. Okay, so let's arrange these. So on the avatar, we want to press Shift F to get the arrangement points up, and I'll select the front piece and arrange it about there, and the back piece on the back, and the sleeve on the arm. Now let's Shift F to deselect that. Now it's important that the curved part of the arm where it joins the shoulder is pointing upwards in the 2D view. If it's not, when you arrange it on an arrangement point around the arm, it may point in all sorts of different directions. So vertically is how you want it. Okay, let's sew these up. So with our where are we? Segment sewing tool, I'll sew there to there, and that will do the other side as well because of our symmetry. And that's the top. And now the sleeve is a little bit different. What we need to do is use a free M to N, because the likelihood is that this line is not as long as this line, is not the same as this line. So whoops, not that line. Oh, it does that sometimes. There we go. So I'm going to let Marvelous Designer make that decision for me. So if we use the M to M free sewing, I want to sew across here. Now I believe this is the front of the shirt, so I want to sew this to the front of the shirt from bottom to top, and then from top to bottom on its corresponding back. And I've done it many times and I do it wrong every time. So define your first seam and press enter, and then bottom to top, top to bottom. And the reason I go bottom to top then top to bottom is because it's following that flow. If I went bottom to top, one of them would be reversed. And when you're ready, just press enter again and you should see that all that is lovely. Okay, so now let's create the mirror for the sleeve. So copy and mirror paste, just pop that there. That's not too far off. Let's just move it up, whoops, a little bit. Don't rotate it, move it. There we go. Now, because this is reversed, I now know that the front starts on the other side. So when I use my end-to-end sewing, I want to start from this side to that side, and then it's bottom to top and top to bottom, and then press enter. Didn't press enter quick enough or early enough. Define your first line, John, press enter, and then your second lines. There we go, and then press enter. There we go. Sorry about that. Now I'm just going to disable the sleeves for a second, or freeze them. No, yeah, I'm not going to freeze them because that won't work. I need to deactivate pattern and sewing. I don't want them to interfere at the moment. I'm just going to let the top join up, and when the top's settled down, I'm just going to freeze the top and then activate the sleeves. There we go. And that's just so that the sleeves don't, you know, pull the t-shirt out of place while it's trying to get into place. It tends to cause problems. So let's select the front and the back and just unfreeze those. And the last thing to do then is to sew up the sleeves. Whoops. Oh goodness. I can't do it right today, or any day, as you probably know from the many mistakes I do in my videos. So there we go, we have a t-shirt from a pattern, and the neck fits nicely, the sleeves fit nicely. You see it's not really pulling them, you know, off the shoulder, which is, you know, often something that happens. And I can make it a little longer if I wish. There we go. Just pull it out at the bottom, and then you're all ready to go away and do your detailing by adding, you know, edges and stitches and all that good stuff, most of which you'll find in my Marvelous Designer playlist if you want to have a look. In the next section, what I'll do is just have a look at a couple of options to adjust the fit, and then we'll finish. So I'll talk to you then. So I've got a couple of adjustments to make. First of all, the yoke parts where the front and the back join. I prefer those to be the same size, because as they're sort of joining together, you know, if they're too far out, they have a tendency to, you know, cause problems. So I'm just going to select the front one, which is 81.8, and then select the back one, which is 79.6, so not too far off. But the back one I'm going to match to the front. So let me change the line length on that by right clicking and picking change line length, and then type in the value you want it to be. Now I'm lucky here because this is pushing the collar side in, or the neck hole side in. If yours is going the other way, you just switch it from start to end, and then click OK, and that will then recalculate, and when I press space that should do the job. And I hope, you know, that gives you a nicer piece around there. If you get any little artifacts, or, you know, things that look like they're pulling or pinching, then your line lengths are probably different. Similarly on the sides, these should be the same length, and by some sort of miracle I've done it 364.5 and 364.5, but again, if not, copy one, right click, change length on the other, but in this case just make sure the bottom point moves, because you don't want the sleeve moving, because that's working fine currently. Okay, so that's a couple of adjustments there. Let's have a look at what else I might do. We've already made it a little bit deeper. One thing you might want to do is fit it to a completely different avatar. So let me turn off our simulation, and I'm going to delete this avatar, and then we'll go and find one of the default, excuse me. So let's pop the just default female in, and as you can see, she's much bigger. So let me select all of our pattern pieces, and I'm going to right click and reset to 3D arrangement point. Now this one never got arranged on a 3D point, so we can turn the points on with Shift F and pop that in an appropriate place. I said an appropriate place. There we go. And Shift F to turn those off. Now the only problem we might get here is the sleeves not bunching at the bottom, so I'm just going to move those down, or rotate it a little and move it down so that the sleeves are clear at the bottom. So let's freeze those as we did before and press space. Whoops, I didn't want to freeze them, I want to deactivate them. That's why you don't want to freeze them. So deactivate pattern and sewing. There we go. Now the t-shirt fits, and then we'll activate the sleeves and they'll come up and fit in as well. Now you might find that this isn't quite fitting as well, and that's just then a question of updating the pattern to fit. If the size is way too big, you can do this the rescaling that we did earlier, which is just selecting them, double clicking on the middle and then making it a little smaller or a little bigger. But sometimes what you want to do is maintain your geometry, and there's a trick for that, and that's to use the shrinkage warp and the shrinkage weft. So if I wanted to make this smaller, for example, but I didn't want the geometry to change, I could say put 95 into both of these values, and as you see that shrunk down, but it didn't change the geometry, and that's the important thing. You know, if you're exporting this and you're going to create morphs, you know, based on size or based on different avatar models, then you want the mesh to stay the same. You don't want any new vertices created or any fewer. You want it to be exact, and using the shrinkage warp and the shrinkage weft will do that for you. Okay, so that's the basics and a little bit more of, you know, using a 2D pattern from a sewing sheet to create a marvelous designer garment. And I hope you found that useful. If you have any comments below, please let me know, and I'll talk to you another time.